there is more to the Battle of Mogadishu than Aidid's faction and violent Somalis, as the United States will learn. The unruly mob was armed and trained by a man soon to become the enemy of not only the U.S., but also the world: Osama bin Laden. A native of Saudi Arabia, bin Laden grew up into an affluent family, the 17th of 52 children. Bin Laden was a member of the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood. The teachings of the religion found themselves perverted as he latched onto the teachings of Abdullah Azzam, a radical who believed Muslims should stage a holy war and create a singular Islamic state, and that elements of Western society were viewed as destructive to the Middle Eastern way of life. With the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in the late 1970s, bin Laden joined the resistance. With his mentor Azzam, they ran a global network for recruits in their jihad. Mektab al-Khidmat had offices throughout the world and pulled migrant radical Islamists in for the fight. Bin Laden creates a new terrorist group in 1988, Al-Qaeda, and returned to Saudi Arabia to raise money for his new terrorist group. Saudi royalty, fearful of bin Laden's anti-Western agenda, revoked his passport and found help with the United States. It only deepens the fanatics' hatred of the West. Al-Qaeda will become a thorn in America's side, not from his home country of Saudi Arabia, but from the Sudan. Osama bin Laden is responsible for both arming and training the Somali rebels in Mogadishu. He is linked to the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Bin Laden is the face of a new type of warfare, a fanatic terrorism that refuses to play by the rules of war and instead embraces savagery and violence. President George W. Bush becomes the 43rd President of the United States on January 20, 2001, just over a decade since his father ended his one and only term. Little does President Bush know the challenges he will face in his 2 terms, nor could he suspect the changing face of warfare to come. It is 8:45 on a sunny morning in New York City, when American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center on the 80th floor. At 9:03, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, crashes into the South Tower, exploding. Both towers will fall. In Washington, D.C., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon's west side. It is 9:45. All 3 planes are hijacked by terrorists with, as the world will soon learn, Al-Qaeda. United Flight 93 is taken captive just 40 minutes after takeoff. Its passengers, knowing they are doomed either way, fight back and presumably defeat the hijackers. It crashes in a field in Pennsylvania, killing the 45 passengers, but saving the plane's intended target. In all, 2,977 innocent victims are counted for, with thousands of injuries. America finds itself at war. President Bush, less than a year into his first term, is forced to face a war against no one country, but against a twisted and evil ideology.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could.
As Al-Qaeda claims credit for the 9/11 attacks, Bush declares a war on terror against the Al-Qaeda. 3 days after the attacks, the government passes the authorization for the use of military force against terrorists. They will defeat bin Laden and his followers and end state sponsorship of terrorists. The United States will smoke out the wily terrorists from their hiding places. Taking down Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan's Taliban government requires a military presence that can adapt to war without rules and can be ready on a moment's notice to intervene. The early 21st century will see special forces come to the forefront of international conflict. Afghanistan, once ruled by the Soviets, fell into the hands of the rebels, the Mujahideen, who had received support from the West. Since both nature and politics abhor a vacuum, the remaining factions of Mujahideen turned amongst themselves in a civil war. In 1994, one of those factions, the Taliban, came into play. These religious zealots, led by Mullah Muhammad Omar, believed in their own brand of Sharia law, one that perverted the beliefs of Islam to one that best serves this power-hungry faction. Bin Laden allies himself with the Taliban, bringing vehicles and jihadists. 2 of his terrorists kill Ahmad Shah Massoud, leader of the Western sympathetic Northern Alliance, on September 9th, setting the stage for Taliban Al-Qaeda rule. After 9/11, the United States is officially backed by many NATO countries. This is not just an American war on terrorism, but a global one. Afghanistan refuses to give up bin Laden to the Americans. The U.S. sends in a small covert team on September 26th, dubbed Jawbreaker, landing in the Panjshir Valley under cover of dark. This 8-man team is comprised of the CIA's Special Activities Division and Counter-Terrorist Center. Using satellite communications, this reconnaissance team also comes with $3 million in U.S. bills, with the intent of recruiting Northern Alliance support. Jawbreaker lays the groundwork for Operation Enduring Freedom. It starts with Operation Crescent Wind, where coalition airstrikes destroy most of the Taliban's radar and command units, aircraft, and SA-2 and SA-3 surface-to-air missiles. The way is clear for ground forces, which brings 4 major special forces task forces, all under the leadership of General Tommy Franks, commander of the coalition forces. They are Combined Joint Task Force Mountain, the Joint Interagency Task Force Counterterrorism, Coalition Joint Civil Military Operations Task Force, and Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, or JSOTF. This last one, the JSOTF, consists of 3 task forces. Colonel John Mulholland's Task Force Dagger, deployed to the north of Afghanistan, Dagger is partly there to liberate the oppressed in training guerrilla forces through infiltrating SF Operational Detachment Alpha teams. Task Force K-Bar is led by Captain Robert Harward, a Navy SEAL. Structured with 16-man platoons, K-Bar was used in part on recon and surveillance missions. K-Bar also included coalition nation special forces, such as Canada's Joint Task Force 2 and Germany's Kommando Spezialkräfte. Then there is Task Force Sword, the hunter-killer force, tasked with killing senior leadership and other targets of worth to the enemy. On October 19th, 12-man ODA 555, with the members of Jawbreaker, meet with warlord representatives of Fahim Khan, the latest military commander of the Northern Alliance, to begin joint operations. ODA 595 allies itself later that night, in spite of a treacherous sandstorm, with Uzbek warlord general Abdul Rashid Dostum, who has no love for the Taliban. A combat drop is staged in southern Afghanistan. Airmen from the 23rd Special Tactics Squadron and near 200 Army Rangers from 3rd Battalion 75th Ranger Regiment drop south of a Kandahar airstrip. The seizure of this strategic achievement is filmed and televised by the United States. The world and the Taliban are watching. A Special Forces team attempts to capture Taliban leader Mullah Omar in his compound. They do, however, find something nearly as valuable: intelligence. A firefight ensues against Taliban fighters, right before the operators are successfully extracted. The casualties, due to the classified nature of the mission, remain publicly unconfirmed. Coalition forces continue to work side by side with anti-Taliban Northern Alliance, be they on the ground, through airstrikes, or even on horseback. The city of Mazar-e-Sharif, entrenched with Taliban fighters, falls in a day in a combination of ground forces and airstrikes. Another important and vital aspect of Operation Enduring Freedom was a psychological one. Flyers announcing the $25 million reward on bin Laden were dropped by the air, and civil affairs teams under Task Force Dagger moved into Mazar-e-Sharif to win the trust of the Afghanis. 3 days later, the capital city of Kabul is taken by General Fahim Khan and coalition forces, forcing Al-Qaeda and Taliban out to the mountains in East Afghanistan. More cities and villages fall until, on November 23rd, the Taliban officially surrender. Kandahar follows on December 6, 2001. Operation Enduring Freedom concludes in a mere 49 days from the start. It is a testimony to the effectiveness of special forces and their ability to not only fight, but to also lead the way to success. But bin Laden and many of his followers remain at large, having escaped to the eastern city of Jalalabad. There, they have access to the Tora Bora, a series of underground caves left over during their war against the Soviet Union years before. They are a mere dozen miles from the Pakistani border. Special Forces operators team up with local militia to eliminate Al-Qaeda. The militia forces total near 3,000, led by ODA 572 and members of Jawbreaker. They also engage warlords Mohammad Zaman and Hazrat Ali. The fighting ends around December 17th, after nearly 1,000 Al-Qaeda retreat under cover of a false ceasefire with coalition forces. Several hundred Al-Qaeda are killed, and a coalition group, led by a SEAL platoon, clean up the 70 underground cages and 60 structures to gain intelligence. The Taliban regroup in 2002, and with Al-Qaeda, continue to fight the coalition forces, with Operation Anaconda launched to eliminate the remaining forces. With Anaconda concluded on March 19th, NATO established the International Security Assistance Force to help Afghanistan transition into a new government and to keep the Taliban from rising back up.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.